Today I'm speaking with David Shriner-Cahn. He's a podcaster, he's an entrepreneur, he's a speaker, and he is the podcaster of Smashing the Plateau. SmashingThePlateau.com is his website where he's helping entrepreneurs who are starting a business for the first time in their life. Maybe you're at this chapter of your life, and being able to give them the support and the help that they need to have a successful business. So enjoy. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast for this week. This week, my special guest is David Shriner-Cahn. Hi, David. How are you?
Hi, Natalie. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here with you.
Oh, I'm so excited about this conversation because we met through a mutual friend. We got connected. And one of the gifts that you have, or one of the services that you have, is really helping people who are either, stepping out of career, are looking at this next chapter of their life and wanting to become an entrepreneur, but they're starting from that place, which I believe is quite a number of people that we have listening to the podcast. So I suppose my first question is, like, how did you fall into that lane? What excited you about that, and what actually got you doing that kind of work?
Well, Natalie, first of all, that is my story. So I was an employee for the first 28 years of my career. And in 2006, I left my last job and started a single person consulting business. So that was 16 years ago. And I have been an entrepreneur since then. So I've been an entrepreneur now for a sizable chunk of my career. And one of the things that I see that I've experienced, and B, that I see is that the transition from being an employee to being an entrepreneur, even when you stay in the same field, is really daunting. And my own career as an entrepreneur has also evolved, as most people's careers do. So what I'm doing now is very different than what I was doing in 2006 when I started my consulting business.
Right. And so I'm imagining there was a certain amount of fear that was coming up for you, like stepping out onto out for your own. What kind of mindset were you in? Was there something that was compelling you to do this, or was it just, something that you were toying with and thought, I might have a go at this and see what that looks like?
Honestly, Natalie, I'd actually thought about being an entrepreneur on and off for a very long time. When I was very early in my career, I was trained as an engineer. I worked as a chemical engineer in my first two jobs. And in my second job, just after my second anniversary, following my performance review, which was a very positive performance review, and I got a nice raise along with it. A month later, my boss called me into his office and he said, David, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that you're doing a good job. The bad news is you don't have a job here anymore. And I was like, what? What just happened? What did I not see coming? And the reality was the company that I worked for had lost a lot of business. So they ended up firing a significant portion of the staff, including me. And one of the things I had explored at that point, because I didn't really want to be in that situation again. I wanted to have more control over my destiny. And so I'd actually toyed with the idea of becoming an entrepreneur. And I'll be honest, I knew nothing about it at all. I didn't know anybody who was an entrepreneur. I grew up in a family where both my parents were employees for my entire life. They were very risk averse. So the whole concept of being an entrepreneur, which seemed very risky, was something that was quite foreign to me. So my next career move was not to become an entrepreneur at that point, but I thought about it. I did end up making a career pivot. I ended up going into the nonprofit sector and spent 23 years doing that kind of work, mostly in management and leadership roles. So I became quite skilled at things like team building and inspiring others to succeed. all sort of basic leadership and management skills. I thought about the whole thing about having more control, and you learn the hard way when something happens that if you don't want to experience it again. I realized that jobs are not permanent, and in America in particular, especially when I started my career, there was, I think, kind of a myth that there's this kind of dual loyalty, that you owe some loyalty to your employer, and in turn, your employer owes some loyalty to you, when in fact, it actually doesn't work that way. And legally, in most state, the employment laws are primarily state laws, and in most states in America, employment, unless you have an employment contract, it's actually employment at will, which means that either the employer or the employee can terminate the relationship at any point in time for no reason. They don't actually have to give you a reason. So, I'd always thought about this issue of control. And when I was in the nonprofit sector, I actually got to know a lot of people that were in business, because many of them served on the boards of the organizations that I worked for. And I got to meet and spend time with some people that were very successful entrepreneurs, some of whom had run major companies, including public companies. So, I got to experience that. And I decided that, when I was sort of mid-career, that I really wanted to have more control, even though I had a good job. My last job lasted a long time. I was in the same organization for 18 years. And the linear progression for me would have been to go to a more senior position in another organization. And I opted to take the route that was less traveled and go out on my own. And for me, the actual timing of it, the trigger was a job termination. There was a new CEO that came into my organization, and I reported to the CEO. And there was some duplication of skills between us. Mm-hmm. And even though we got along very well, and there weren't personality conflicts, there weren't performance issues, but it was pretty clear to me that the organization was probably not going to employ both of us forever. And so I made a decision that my next move would be to go out on my own, if in fact my job was terminated. I wasn't quite, when you talk about risk, I didn't quite feel confident enough to just leave and start a business on my own. But if I had gotten pushed out, that was what I had intended to do. And so that is what happened. A year after the new CEO came on board, I was out of a job, and that was day one of my consulting business.
There you go. I know, well, my first career was in the fitness industry, and I started managing fitness clubs at the age of 21. So I got to cut my business teeth on other people's businesses, so to speak, which was very good experience for me. And of course, I was able to then, use those skills then in all the subsequent businesses I had after that. My ex-husband and I were serial entrepreneurs. And then we finally, fell into the whole Mind Movies situation. And it's, we had this quantum growth, and now we've got this, amazing business that's passionate and fills us with, with purpose. And, initially when we started, we knew nothing about the internet, and the internet is really how we build our business. So it's like, sometimes it's interesting how your past experience, if you look back at the breadcrumbs of what happened before you, kind of helps to give you some advice or lead you in the direction of where you're going to go next. So was that the case for you? Like, how did you know what kind of a business you wanted to run?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I didn't think that it was actually such a major shift, because I was working in the same field. So I was doing nonprofit management inside organizations as an employee for more than 2 decades. And my intent was to try to work with multiple clients, helping them with nonprofit management issues. And that is in fact what I did. So in terms of the actual kind of work that I did, the tasks didn't change that much. What did change is there are certain elements of running a business that I had never done before. So, for example, I came out, my personal skills were very strong in finance and operations. That's an area that I focused on in all of my jobs in the nonprofit sector. And I was also very strong in people development issues. What I'd never done before was marketing and sales, particularly marketing and selling myself. So that was brand new. That was a steep learning curve. So like I know many people when they leave a job and they start their own business, if they've never looked at a P&L before, it can be quite daunting. And I've had clients that, one client that I had who ran a small business and wanted to do better and to grow the business. And when I started asking questions about some of the financial data, I didn't get such great answers. And finally, this person at one meeting handed me 2 boxes and said, "Here, look through these." And it was 2 years worth of unopened bank statements and unopened payroll reports. And this person was actually making more money than they thought.
Right.
So not being comfortable with the numbers doesn't mean that you're not doing well. It just means that you don't know. So I was, there were certain things I was really good at, but there were other things that I was kind of clueless about. And I had the other piece that was quite different being on my own. My network as an employee was actually quite different than the kind of network that I needed as a business owner. So I didn't hang around with a lot of people who were entrepreneurs when I was an employee. I knew some, but I didn't spend a lot of time with them. And about a year after I started my business, I joined a business networking organization. And all of a sudden, because of the structure of being part of this organization, I was spending a lot of time with other entrepreneurs, and many of them were in very tiny businesses like mine, a single person business or maybe a very small team. And so that was a real game changer. I would say the people that I was hanging out with was probably the biggest game changer for me, being around the right people. And as I reflected upon that, kind of later on in my journey as an entrepreneur, between the kinds of clients I was serving and I started podcasting in 2014. So I and my business, we kind of invested heavily in the whole content creation area of marketing. So between that and the client base that was evolving of primarily solopreneur business owners, we ended up launching a community for consultants, focusing specifically on those consultants that are building their business following a long career as an employed professional. And I would say with a special emphasis on those like me that have gotten pushed out, and that triggered the timing of when they started their business.
Right. Yeah. So I think that, because, our story, the Mind Movie story, is very similar to that. Like, when we understood, like, we got the idea and then we set up the website and then everyone's sending emails going, "This is changing my life." We're like, okay, we need to figure out this internet thing. So we came to the US, we went to a seminar, we joined a mastermind group. We made friends with a ton of internet marketers. So we were just sponges for as long as we had to be able to create, the business that we have. So I love that. Okay. Number one, look at what it is that you like to do or what you're good at, because that'll give you a good indication of the kind of business that you want to start. You want to surround yourself with the right people. Being part of that mastermind group, not only were we learning, but we were getting the right kind of advice. Like, we didn't have friends just blowing smoke up our butts. Like, we had, people who were qualified that were giving us really good advice, which helped a lot. So what are some of the other things that, if someone's looking to start a business, that they should be thinking about?
Well, I think, you've touched on some of them that are really important, Natalie. So the first piece really is you do need to do some self-reflection, and you need to do it in a way where you're not feeling pressured to make a decision that you might regret later on. So I advise people to take a sabbatical if they can. And to me, there's sort of two ways to do it. One is, if you've been working for 20 plus years as an employee, and then you go out on your own, if you have the financial bandwidth to take 6 to 12 months and actually do some really deep self-reflection, that's great. If you can't handle that financially, another way to do it is to get some kind of interim work that is going to pay the bills, that is interim, that you're not saying, oh yeah, I really need to focus on building this, whatever it is. Like, you take a contract job, or maybe you take a couple of part-time things that at least keep your lifestyle going while you can really devote the energy and the resources you need to doing some self-reflection. And what you've got to figure out is, what is it that I really, what is it that I'm skilled to do, that I'm most competent to do? What is it that I love doing the most? Who do I want to serve? And then find the intersection where those three elements have some kind of commonality. And when you determine what you're most competent at doing, what you love doing, who you want to serve, then you need to focus on, okay, for those people that I want to serve, what kind of problem do I think I am really good at solving for them? That's easy for me to solve repeatedly, and it's hard for them to solve, and it's valuable to them. Then you need to get out and talk to people who know this population, and some of the people who are part of this population, and you need to determine, okay, do they agree with my hypothesis about how important this problem is to solve? Are there people in this population, and people can represent companies who are actually going to be paying for the services? It's not to be individuals making the payments, but individuals are still making the decisions. So you need to speak to people about the kind of problem that you've hypothesized. Is it an important problem for them to solve? How badly do they want to get it solved? Do they have the money to solve it? And are they willing to pay for somebody else to help them get it solved? And if you can get an answer that is yes to all of those, then you can try to test something that you can sell to one of these people. And I strongly encourage anyone who's paying attention to sell first, build later. Because most people find the market research very daunting. They don't like to ask people these questions. But if you are going to sell something successfully, you are going to need to talk to these people, and you're going to need to convince them that you can solve their problem. So you do need to go out and talk to them. And I would say, if you can, get some kind of pilot of whatever your offer is. Get some pilot out there that you can test with somebody, that you'll get somebody to pay for before you try to build it, before you build a website, before you do any marketing around it. Just get some proof of concept that somebody has actually paid you to do something and it works well. Yeah. Because I find too many people spin their wheels building a website, investing money in it, and then they're done, and it turns out nobody wants to buy it. Or they spend time building a program and they try to launch it and nobody wants to buy it. If you have 20 plus years of experience, I guarantee you, if this is something that you're really good at, you can build the program really quickly.
Right.
The selling of it is going to be the hard part.
Right. No, I agree. And the thing is, with, especially with a lot of people used to being on Zoom right now, and you've got the online aspect, that you can teach live, the concepts that you want, get feedback from the people that are going through the program or going through the coaching or whatever it is that you're doing, so that you can make sure that you can tweak and hone that, so that if you do pre-record it, make it a physical, like a product, then you've already done it once, you've already tested it out, like you said, you've got, proof of concept, and before you even need to do anything. So, that in itself, I think, is a great piece of advice. And I think the other thing that we can fall victim to is thinking that we need to have the product first. So we waste a lot of time hanging out there and doing that. And like, we can't move forward. I can't launch myself until this is done. But really what that's doing is keeping us in a little holding pattern, because maybe our fear is getting out there and talking to people and doing that marketing. But unless you can get that done first and get that up and running, then there's no point in making the product anyway, right?
That is correct. It's way better to get it started than to get it right. And it's way better to get an initial sale than to spend a lot of time and money trying to build something that nobody is going to pay for.
Right. I love that. So, there is a certain mindset, I think, that goes along with being an entrepreneur or a solopreneur. So if we had to change the way we think to become the person that we need to be to step into this successful business, what are some of those mindset shifts that we would need to make?
Well, one thing you need to realize, if you're coming off a long career as an employee, particularly if you were in a mid to high level position, you're coming out of a situation where your inbox was overflowing. Your calendar was always full. You had a built-in social structure, and your self-identity was tied to the company that paid your salary. And all of a sudden, you're going out on your own. Your inbox is empty. Your calendar is empty. You have no social structure. You're all alone. You're working on your own. Your friends from work, you may find, are ghosting you. And then you have to, you're not sure about your self-identity because you're not working for that company anymore. You don't know what you even are going to be selling. You're not sure what to put on your LinkedIn profile. Or if you meet somebody new, they say, "Oh, David, what do you do?" And you're like, "Well, I'm not really sure." So to get up and market and sell yourself to people you don't know can be quite daunting. So I would say, in terms of mindset, the most important thing is surround yourself with the right people, because they will reinforce what you are actually good at. They will keep you from underselling yourself. I've seen this happen many, many times. Natalie, you mentioned being in a mastermind with people who taught you. One of the great things about being in a peer support group is different people have different strengths. And when you're in the right kind of environment where people care about one another, they will support one another. And I may not know a lot about internet businesses. You may not know a lot about reading financial statements, right? And so
that's very true, actually.
Right. We can help each other. And that's what happens when you're in peer support groups. So the most important thing in terms of mindset is realize that you're not alone. You can do this, but spend time with people who can support you and support that positive mindset. Because if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur, you've got to be willing to take a step, even when you're not sure what the outcome is going to be.
Right. And ask for help.
Very important. Don't be shy.
Exactly. No one alone is an island. No one has ever, even with me, like all my big things that I've been able to achieve in life, I've never done on my own. We always need other people around us, and don't be shy about asking, and be open to receive. Because if you do align with yourself and you are in a group like that, then people are going to want to help you. They are going to be offering their help and their advice and their support. You have to be willing to go, "Thank you. Yes, I'll accept that." And be willing to accept it as well and receive.
Yes. And by the way, I think it's really important when you're asking for advice, using the word advice is great, because people don't like to be sold to. But if you're asking somebody for advice, they will be flattered. They will tell you. The other thing is, no matter who you're asking for advice, always ask that person how you can help them. Even though you may think, "Oh, I'm not in the same, the same league as this person, you'd be surprised. And I find that when I ask others for advice and I say, thank you so much for this has been super helpful. How can I help you? Most people are touched that you ask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And take it one step further. If you know the person that you're speaking to and you have an idea of how you could possibly help, because sometimes you can ask the question, which is great. But sometimes you go, look, I have, this, would this be of value to you? Or could I help you with this? So that you're giving something specific, which really, is that one step where you're going, I do genuinely want to help and support you, so which is great. So David, I'm, you were mentioning before that you work with entrepreneurs and other people. So tell me what that looks like. And if someone's listening to the podcast right now and they're like, okay, I'm thinking about dipping my toe into the entrepreneurial pool. If they go to you for support, what does that look like and how do you work with people?
Well, one way that we work is through the Smashing the Plateau community. So this is a community of people that have primarily solo businesses. So it's a lot of consultants, coaches, and other small businesses. Most of them, I would say, are sort of mid to late career stage. And also most have spent a couple decades or more as an employee first. So if that's the kind of environment where you think you would feel comfortable, you can certainly check out the community. We have a private discussion forum for our members. We have live events. We have all kinds of guides, trainings, tools, and resources that are helpful for entrepreneurs, again, particularly solo businesses.
Great. Awesome. So that's at smashingtheplateau.com?
Yes, it is.
Excellent. So, so like I said, if you're listening to the podcast, I encourage you to go over to David's website, smashingtheplateau.com, and join a community and, and get that support that we were talking about. As you said, it was an important part of your journey. It was a very important part of our journey, being part of a group like that and aligning ourselves with the right people, because, you will come across challenges. There will be challenging times. But when you have people like that around you that remind you that you've got this, and they can offer that support, it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, entrepreneurship is really hard work. It's way harder than being an employee. So you need to be motivated to succeed, and you need support to be able to succeed. And there's nothing like being with the right people to help you get there.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, David, for sharing your time and your wisdom with us today. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you, Natalie.